Yeah, so he was a peacekeeper and he was in Jerusalem, correct?
He told everybody he was a spy.
Yo, did it spurt like an anime?
It didn't spurt, it kind of, the bone popped out and there was a little splash. I guess you could call it the nuclear technology side of things.
Welcome to Life and Times with Patrick Banks. Today, I have someone who is as complicated as he is giving. He supported not just me for many years, but many members of my extended family. Once upon a time, he was a heavy-duty mechanic, primarily in the uranium mines, and he won the lottery, but not the 649. He won the medical lottery, but not in a good way. He has a disease so rare, he might be the only person in Western Canada who has it. He's an amazing man, loved by many. I give you my Uncle Derek. How's your day going?
Oh, par for the course. Not good.
No, that's fair. No, it's fair. So unfortunately, I don't have internet on this computer, so I couldn't Google it. But I did a project on Dish because I wanted to understand it. But just so to be clear, it's on your screen.
Diffuse Idiopathic Skeletal Hyperostosis.
Yeah, so for those that don't know, so because it is so rare, it's basically where your ligaments calcify and turn to bone. Primarily on the right side of the spine is where it starts for most people. Yeah, there is no cure.
There's no cure. There's intervention if you catch it early enough. There's surgery if you catch it early enough. But once it gets to a certain point, there's nothing to be done other than symptom relief.
So what's that on your chest? You're wearing a back brace?
Yeah, it's just a brace to put pressure on the rib cage so it doesn't move around as much, because the dish calcifies connective tissue where it connects to the muscle. The less you can have the bones moving, the less it fractures. So although it doesn't stop it from happening, it extends the amount you can be active during the day because it minimizes movement. And it's just one stage of braces. It's due to be replaced again soon. It's just finding one that's going to work properly, which is self-experimentation because they don't really have enough knowledge about what it is and what it's doing.
Yeah, I also have a lot of back problems, obviously not comparable, but I was being a little hypochondriac and I was at the doctor. I was like, I want to get tested for this. My uncle has this. And the doctor, they just refused to. The doctor's literally like, your uncle is probably the only, like I said in the intro, your uncle's probably the only person in all of Alberta who has this. I haven't heard about this since med school. Don't count yourself, quote, don't count yourself so lucky. But I'm like, I do think I'm that lucky.
Well, it seems to be genetic to a certain extent, because it seems to be more proclivity in family lines that have either dish or forms of severe arthritis and rheumatism, because that's basically what it is. It's just a severe form of arthritis and rheumatism.
Yeah, and we definitely have that in the fam.
Yeah, it goes back a fair ways. We don't know about your grandfather's parents because they didn't have access to that kind of medical care in their years. But you can go back to the arthritis that he had, and it's definitely a jumping off point. And since it's been diagnosed in most of the immediate family, for some reason I don't know why some of them did, but they did. No, they're all diagnosed with dish, but when I was going through the process, you had to have at least 4 of your vertebrae that were involved with the candle wax bone growth on the right-hand side. And that was, 8 years after the first diagnosis before they made it official. And they all got their diagnoses within weeks.
And these are people related to us?
Yeah. Oren, Francis, Gwen.
Really?
Becky.
They are all diagnosed with this disease as well.
And if your mother would have known about it, she would have been diagnosed with it too, because that's basically almost the exact same symptoms that she was having, other than hers were made worse by the abundance of medication, a lot which was not what she should have been having.
So I'd like to explore that a little further. When I was speaking with Tiffany, I'm just trying to get the full picture on, this is the life and times of Patrick Banks. I'm trying to, how did I become me? Like, what are the factors? Like I want someone to be able to watch this show and be like, I know who Patrick is, or I understand Patrick.
Right.
So she's older than you. How much older than you was she?
6 years.
So what, she had Tiffany when she's 19?
Well, 20. She was born in 60 and Tiffany was born in 80.
I'll get the elephant out of the room like right off the bat so we can just move forward.
Yeah.
So I've heard conflicting reports about whether or not the home was abusive when you guys were growing up.
What do you classify as abusive though?
Well, I don't know. I know one person said that they didn't think abuse happened and one person did. What's your opinion on this?
Well, for some reason, your Aunt Becky and your Aunt Gwen seem to have a opinion that they were abused as children. Although I don't know in what way, other than they consider what they were treated as emotional abuse. Your grandfather believed in corporal punishment, but he wasn't abusive about it.
So could you give me an example of this?
Spankings. He used a belt on your Uncle Orrin when he was, I don't know, a teenager, I guess, maybe younger. But that isn't anything I ever saw happen. I heard it. I had it used on me a couple of times, but I wouldn't have called it abuse. It all depends on whether or not you believe in beating your kids or not, right?
I guess so.
And it's not something that I don't remember it as a child, other than very few occasions. And I guarantee at least one of them I deserved it.
Yeah, I'm not trying to slander Grandpa. I loved him dearly.
Oh no, there's everybody in the family seems to have some issues with him. The thing is, they don't want to take into account his own personality and his own experiences. They think he should have behaved a certain way. He didn't behave that way, so he abused them, right? Well, whatever. You can count anything as abuse if you look at it from the right point of view.
No, for sure. I'm just trying to understand the whole picture. You know, we're talking about Mom. We'll stick with her for now, and then we can maybe dip back later.
Well, and around the time that Tiffany was born, when she was pregnant, she came back to the house, and it's not like Dad had anything. He was overseas at the time, and that was the same year that your grandparents split up, so he really wasn't involved with any of it at all.
Yeah, so he was a peacekeeper, and he was in Jerusalem, correct?
He was in Syria, Golan Heights. He was in Ismailia. His Jerusalem was when he was vacationing, and when he was working at a different base. They used to go to Jerusalem for part of his job. When he was doing that job, his job was managing I guess it was the enlisted man's club. They call it the 7-Up Club. But his other job was to sit in his hotel room, apartment, whatever the fuck it was, and it overlooked the airport. And he'd sit there for 4 hours watching planes come in and out and write down what kind of plane it was, what direction it came from, where it left from, how long it took to take off, so you know where the planes are going and what they're doing. He told everybody he was a spy.
So when I spoke with Francis on the podcast, he had mentioned something about Grandpa had all of a sudden one time, years later, after the like the redaction, or what's it called, when it became not top secret anymore, that he worked with something to do with nuclear strategy or something.
He was a nuclear war specialist. His job was planning nuclear wars, but nobody was allowed to know. So when we grew up, our mail was read, our telephones were tapped, we were investigated on a yearly basis by the military police, and we were always accountable. One of the things my father drummed into us when we were young is, I don't care what you do, but you don't do it here.
Well, yeah, he was, I don't know how many people in his trade were trained in nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare, but one of the things he did when he was doing the 7-Up Club thing was they would go up in a helicopter with a Russian and an American, and they'd fly around Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, all these places, and look for communications towers, because he was a communication specialist. And by whatever tower it was, that's how they'd tell you what they were doing, if it was for picking up aircraft or if it was for communication or whatever. And that was part of the, I guess you could call it the nuclear technology side of things. Yeah,
I think to get a full understanding of what home must have been like, I feel like we kind of need to flesh out Grandpa. Interesting. That's where the first part of my alias comes from. He was Patrick. He was a complicated man. So he had 6 children, and he was bisexual?
Yeah, you could say that.
What would you say?
Well, he started with women, then he changed to men, and when he was on each one, he was exclusive. So more likely, you'd have to classify him as gay, because he was never with both at the same time. He still hung out with women and liked women's company. He just didn't like to have sex with them.
That must have been hard for him, like at coming out at the time, or if he ever even came out. I don't know if I've said this before, but I remember one time I straight up asked him. He told me no, and then the next day, because he had his chair, his that he liked to sit in. The next day there was like beside his chair, not even in the garbage. He like gave up halfway through the process. There was like a broken up gay porno DVD. And I was like, well, you just ride yourself out there, old man.
He's still from the age where identifying yourself in certain ways to certain people just isn't acceptable.
For sure. Yet again, I don't want to put words in his mouth or anyone's mouth, but I would assume that they would probably be, like, I'd probably be confusing. I know when we just spoke with Lee's, link in the description, she spoke about her son, James, coming out and how confused he was. And in a time where obviously it's not like it is now, it's almost, and these are not my words, I'm literally quoting a gay man. It's like training to be gay. And that was in the 90s, you know, where it could have been, you know, if we were here in the 60s and 70s, I feel like it was socially frowned upon. I'm sure he had a lot of internal conflict.
Well, he was never open about it until after he left the military. And even then, like, there's two different kinds of coming out. There's the coming out where you tell everybody, and there's the coming out where you participate in the open. You just don't make an issue out of the fact. Like, you don't go around telling people, but you live the lifestyle. You know? So there's different pressures no matter how you look at it.
And then I've heard before, you know, when he was home, it was like the military at home. Is that correct?
To a certain extent, but that's the lifestyle. There's nobody that lived in a military family that didn't have the same thing. And it wasn't like you're living with someone that's in the military. Most of the people around us were Air Force, very little Army or never any Navy that I remember. So they all kind of had what you kind of refer to as inside jobs, right? Air Force is in the planes, they're not on the ground. But your grandfather was a combat veteran from Korea. So his experience is different than everybody around him, and how he deals with it is different than everybody around him. They may have been to war, but they weren't on the ground. That's another thing I don't think the rest of them really took into account. As to living like it's in the military, I don't even remember anything out of the ordinary for heavy duty discipline, at least not to me. Maybe to the older ones, but you got to remember I was 4 years old when Oren left, 5 when Becky left, and maybe 7 or 8 when Gwen left.
And they left all right at 18 or before 18, is that correct?
Pretty much, yeah. Becky, I think, was 17, but she was getting married. Gwen was 17 or 18. And Daphne, I think, was 16 or 17, and she turned 18 in Winnipeg, maybe.
So being in a military family, the family was quite transient.
Mm-hmm.
You know, moved around all across Canada. Every kid was kind of born in a different province.
No, most of them were born in Nova Scotia. Francis was born in Newfoundland, and I was born in Saskatchewan, so 3 provinces. Yeah, all the rest of them were born in Nova Scotia. Oren might have been New Brunswick, but Gwen and Becky, definitely Nova Scotia. Daphne, Nova Scotia.
But once you transitioned out of that life, how did you get into doing heavy-duty mechanics?
Totally by luck.
Can you tell me that story?
I was working at a service station in northern Saskatchewan, up by Deschambault Lake, and a friend of mine that had been working in mining for a few years called me and told me that they had a entry-level position open, and if I called this guy and if I convinced him that I could get the job. So I called the guy up, I convinced him I was the guy he wanted to hire. 8 days later, I started work.
Can you tell me any things that stand out about that work? I know that there are deaths in the mining industry from time to time. Was there anything, you know, like any gross negligence you've witnessed, or any like cool stories that jump out at you about your time there that you would be willing to share?
Well, there's been a lot of times where I considered people were hurt through negligence, partially their own, partially the people around them.
How long did you work in the mines for?
19 and a half years altogether.
And was it your declining health that caused you to stop?
Oh yeah, I just couldn't do it anymore. I had already moved from a fully active underground repair job to fixing pumps because it was less physically demanding. But even at that point, I just couldn't do that anymore. Part of it was the atmosphere that was starting to take over at the mine site itself. It wasn't a very good workplace with the attitudes that were starting to come to the front, little clique groups that were getting special treatment, and people that were trying to climb the ladder no matter what they had to do to other people to climb the ladder. The idea of doing your job well And getting promoted because you did your job well was getting taken over by politics.
You're not a very political guy, are you?
No, I couldn't keep my mouth shut to people that I should have kept my mouth shut towards, and it wasn't doing me any good.
Like, what sort of things would you say?
Oh, I told them I thought they were being stupid and that you couldn't start treating people like they were dirt just because someone else is somebody's buddy. You can't keep giving people special treatment just because when you finish work, you go drinking together when you get back home. You're here at a job site. You have a job to do. You have certain things that are supposed to be done. You want to take advantage of your position, fine. Don't make someone else pay for it.
You're so idealistic.
No, I just want people to treat me the way I'm going to treat them. If I'm going to judge you on how you behave when you're underground with me, then I expect you to do the same thing. I don't expect you to judge me on who's my buddy and who's not my buddy, and for what reasons they're not my buddy. And they also didn't like the fact that I wouldn't keep my mouth shut when I thought people were doing shit they shouldn't be doing. I got information that someone was talking behind my back. I took the guy to task for it. He tried to deny it until the guy he was talking to behind my back stepped up and admitted that he told me. Then it was a totally different story. And then it's like a little town, right? Everyone all over the place has different rumors about what happened and this and that and the other thing. So they called me in to tell me that someone had reported that I'd been threatening one of the other employees. Who said it? Who did I threaten? Well, that doesn't matter. Did you or didn't you? Well, actually, I've threatened a lot of the employees here, but I need to know which one, if I'm going to admit to that one in particular.
You know this case, so hold up. So this really reminds. So yesterday on my drive to Saskatoon, I listened to Starship Troopers, okay, by Robert Heinlein, I believe is the author. So there's a scene in this book where one of the cadets at boot camp are being disciplined for hitting a superior officer, and they're trying to put him off light, but during the court martial, and it wasn't a court martial, but the disciplinary hearing, he admits, it's like, yeah, they're like, did you hit him? He's like, yeah, I hit him. He hit me first. And they're like, are you sure? You're sure you hit him? Yep. And then afterwards they're like, that was dumb. You should have kicked him out weeks ago. That's too dumb. You don't say that. Come on, you're smarter than this, Derek. Don't admit to hitting people.
Well, it's not like they did.
You've read that book.
It's not like they didn't already know. The difference is the people that were in charge, the superintendent and the manager, one of which I'd worked with, one of which used to work for me when he first started at the mine site. They knew exactly what I was like. They knew why I was doing it when I was doing it, and I always did my job.
So what are you like? How would they describe what you're like?
I wouldn't put up with stupid people. If they wanted to act stupid or talk stupid, they could go do it somewhere else. There was a particular job to be done, and we were at work. It's not to say that nobody goofed around and nobody had fun or anything else, but you're there with people you're there to work with. You're not there to make friends. And if you're not doing your share of the work, then that means somebody else has to do it. And if you're doing your work in a dangerous way, you have to be corrected. And once you're corrected 2 or 3 times, sometimes you have to threaten them. It's just the way it is. It's not the same way in every industry, but it seems to be that way in mining. They have to know they've got skin in the game or they don't pay attention. And the worst thing that you can do when you're working in a mine is not pay attention. A distraction can cost you an arm or a leg pretty fast. I saw it happen when I was working in Thompson. We were putting a bucket back onto a piece of equipment, and I had 2 miners for helpers because we didn't have any gantries or anything to hang the heavy parts off. And we'd gotten this pin into place. It's about 8 inches around, and you stand up on top of it and you take a sledgehammer and you hammer the thing into the hole. So one of the miners is up there and he's got the sledgehammer and he's hammering the shit into the hole, and he starts having a conversation with the other miner. I can't remember what I was doing, but I turned to tell him, you know, if you want to talk to this guy, stop hammering. And before I could say anything, he brings the hammer around and whacks himself in the leg just above his ankle and snaps the bone right out of the backside of his leg.
Yo, did it spurt like an anime?
It didn't spurt. It the bone popped out and there was a little splash. Other than that, it was just bleeding, right? And the guy fucking hits the ground. He was lucky he fell out towards us instead of back in towards the rest of the machine, or he would have got banged up pretty good in there too. But it's just another point of do your job.
Yeah, no headphones at the mine site.
Well, you've got hearing protection on, but you take allowances for that. He had his hearing protection on, which is part of the reason it was a distraction, that he was trying to have the conversation with the other guy that they both knew they shouldn't have been having.
Can you describe to me your journey of the clusterfuck of your diagnosis?
Well, it actually started in about 2007 or 2008. I was leaning over a piece of equipment and I got a really sharp pain in my chest, just above my sternum. And I didn't really think a whole bunch of it at the time, but then it kept happening that I was getting this pain in my chest. So the next time I went out, I went into the mine doctor, the mining company had us use, told him that I was having this pain in my chest. So he sent me to the cardiologist, and I can't remember what they called her, the nerve specialist, and a couple other different doctors. And none of them came up with anything at all. My heart was fine. I obviously wasn't as healthy as I should have been at the time. I didn't last very long on the stress machine or anything, but enough that they got their answer that my heart wasn't the problem. Then they finally noticed I had this big lump in my chest, so they sent me to get a biopsy done on it. So when the doctor goes to stick in the needle to do the biopsy, he realizes that it's too hard to stick the needle into, sends me for a CT scan. A couple hours later, comes back and says, well, it's not something I can biopsy, it's a bone. And that's, I don't know, the last thing I heard from them for several months, until they finally sent me to the rheumatologist that first diagnosed it as, first they diagnosed it as fibromyalgia, then they diagnosed it as costochondritis, then they diagnosed it as severe arthritis, but by then it wasn't really as much into my hips and shoulders as it got to be. And then around 2012, he diagnosed it as dish, but he wouldn't keep doing the x-rays or scans for the progression. I finally got him to do an MRI and a CT within, I don't know, about a year of one another, and that showed up all of the damage on the right side of the spine. But it didn't become an official diagnosis until 2018, because that was when the right side of the spine became fully involved, and there was obviously clouding at all the major joints, and the lump in my sternum had almost tripled in size and grown up my sternum towards my throat and spread across my upper chest. It involved most of my rib connective cartilage at the time. And at the time, there was a possibility that a surgery or an intervention might have helped, but they didn't do anything except try different drugs, try different prescriptions, most of which turned out to be, I never should have been taking them to start with. They caused nothing but problems. Finally, as of lately, everything is fully involved. Both sides of the spine are done. Both hips and shoulders are done. There's cracks in my hips that have grown over with calcification, and cracks in my vertebrae that have grown over with calcification. But all the little spongy things between my vertebrae still seem to be intact. And I've got one little bone nodule just about within touching distance of my spinal cord. So that's the dangerous one. But you can't do anything about any of them. So now it's just a wait and see situation.
Yeah, the last time we spoke about this off camera, you had, and I can cut any of this out if you want, you'd informed me that like they've decided they're not going to do any surgeries, they're not going to do anything else.
Right.
I don't know if you said this explicitly, but I'm under the impression that you're going to be taking the medically assisted suicide route. Is that true? Is that correct?
That's probably very likely. The timing for it is what is going to remain up in the air. Quality of life is very low, and I'm not prepared for it to be much lower than what it is. I've already started the process. I've just been putting off the next step until I'm 100%. This is the path I'm going to take right now, because once you start, you don't stop until you either have your approval or disapproval, and then make your decisions from there. Now, chances are, because of how healthy my heart is, even though with the damage that I have to my other organs, I could possibly go on for even another 10 to 15 years.
How old are you now?
57. I figure I would make it into my late 60s, early 70s. I wouldn't count on anything past that, just because of life history. You don't beat yourself up for 40 years and live to be 100 years old. But as to whether or not I'm going to put up with this for that length of time, that's still a question to be answered. I have red lines. If this little bone piece goes into my spinal cord and I become paralyzed from the waist down, I don't think I'm going to live in a wheelchair very long. I'll try it, just because it's not a matter of just giving up. I'll try whatever needs to be tried. It's going to be one of those red lines that if it doesn't work out, I'll set my date. Simple as that.
Like, what's your thought process like? Like philosophical implications? I don't know. Like, I get suicidal sometimes.
Yeah, but that's the other side of it. I've been suicidal for probably a couple of decades, badly about 10 years ago. But realizing what it is, and especially when you've worked on a suicide hotline, you know what people are going to say. You know all the answers, you know all the proclivities. You can pretty much tell the people that are really desperate compared to the ones that are looking for attention. You treat them both the exact same way. The difference is, when you're considering end of life through medically assisted, it's more about what you're leaving than what you're doing. Like, anybody can go out and step in front of a bus, but you leave a lot of damage behind when you do that. And those are the type of things that I don't agree with. I think if it got to the point where they weren't going to allow me to have them made, I would come up with another method on my own and just set my own date. There's lots of ways. And I'm not too concerned about the...
What are your personal spiritual beliefs?
I actually don't have any solid spiritual beliefs. I was raised Roman Catholic, so you've always got all the garbage that comes with a Christian upbringing. But the people that are out there saying there's absolutely nothing after you die, I don't think they're right either. I can't see how you could have the same recognition of your existence after you're not corporal anymore. Like, you're probably not going to recognize you're you, but that doesn't mean that you just cease to exist altogether. Energy doesn't just disappear. That's all there is to it. And basically, you're an electrochemical reaction in an organic system. So no matter what you think consciousness is, this consciousness after you die isn't very likely. And anything I don't recognize, why does that matter? Well, if it comes down to a moral structure and there is a heaven and a hell, I'm most likely not going to end up in heaven. If it's karmic and it depends on your good against your bad, then you got to wait until that time comes before you know it. If you're one of those people that recognizes your reincarnation after it happens, which there's lots of people that claim to have done that, although the thousands of Cleopatras probably aren't very realistic. You know, that's a pretty seductive way to think about things too. Yeah, you've always got to give it the possibility of the thought, like whose belief system is right and how many people does it take before that belief system is right? Or does it all have to be evidence-based? And if it all has to be evidence-based, then none of it's right. You'll find out when it happens. It'll happen soon enough. It's not that I want to end my life. I'd like to live my life, but I can't live it in a fashion that is acceptable. And that's the big difference, is whether or not it's acceptable. Now, would having more money make it more acceptable? Sure. No one's going to say that's any different, even if you're a millionaire. If you had an extra million, there's lots of things that you could do to make your life more comfortable. But nobody owes me a more comfortable life. And if I'm not able to obtain that more comfortable life on my own, then it's just not going to happen.
It's hard to better your life for yourself, in my personal experience for me. One of the reasons that helped me put the hard work into do what I'm doing, you know, get this project management degree and, you know, have my journeyman's ticket and stuff, like back in the day when I started this 10-year plan, was the things like outside of me that like gave me drive. It's kind of like a dog, you know, people are way more likely to feed their pet than feed themselves, or give their pet medication than themselves. You know what I mean? It's because it's still something outside of them. Same thing, like if you live by yourself, it's really easy to be really messy because no one's judging you but you, and you don't care, you know. Yeah, but I really wanted to be able to help out like you and Tiffany and my dad, and Tiffany straight up told me no, which I personally, sorry Tiffany, you're watching this, I personally think that's stupid. Like, that's not how families, like high-end families like Johnny, like, they help each other and they like have investments together and they build it's just that's how people with wealth build wealth. But anyways, straight up told me no. Like, put it on yourself. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't care about me. You know what I mean? If it's just up to me, like, but so I don't know. And I know this isn't anything on you. Like, you're literally the one dying. But it sucks, like, because my motivations for trying to raise my place in life, like, other than vanity and stuff, like, I'm realistically probably not gonna be able to help you out. And I'm realistically probably, like, I guess I don't know. You never know. My dad is fucking, he just keeps on going. So he's a wild card. You never know. But if I had to put my money on it, like, he could probably run circles around you, but nobody else.
Oh, he'll probably make it into his 70s.
Yeah, well, hopefully. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for being vulnerable with me. And, I want to let you know how much I love you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's the Life and Times.